North Korea said it had test-fired a nuclear-capable cruise missile. That's just hours before Trump arrived in South Korea. But the US president seems confident that he can de-escalate tensions between Seoul and Pyongyang. That's despite not being able to set up a meeting with the North Korean leader, Kim Jong Un.
The Korean Peninsula, and I know you are officially at war, but we will see what we can do to get that all straightened out. I know Kim Jong Un very well. We get along very well. We really weren't able to work out timing.
Now, given that Trump seemed keen to meet the North Korean leader, I asked Jenny Town from the foreign affairs think tank, the Stimson Center, why a meeting didn't happen.
Well, so far, Trump has indicated several times that he's open to meeting with Kim Jong Un. He wants to meet with Kim Jong Un. Kim Jong Un did make some overtures last month saying that there is a possibility for diplomacy in the future, but really only when the time is right and when the agenda is clear. And so far, that agenda is not clear. And the North Koreans have not been responsive to Trump's overtures during this trip itself. And of course, there was just the test fire of a nuclear-capable cruise missile yesterday in the lead up, and some statements between North Korea and Russia really calling out US and South Korea alliance as being part of the agitation in the region. So this isn't the time for that diplomacy, for US DPRK diplomacy to get started. But certainly there is still possibility for it in the future.
You mentioned the launch of those test missiles. What message is Pyongyang sending with that?
I think, this was an interesting test. Kim Jong Un was not there at it, so it doesn't have the same kind of political weight as one where he would have been overseeing the test itself. But I think it is a signal that this is not the time for diplomacy, that there is not room for, there's not the agenda isn't set. We heard Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump still talk about denuclearization, which the North Koreans have said is off the tables. We also saw Trump in Japan meet with the families of the abductees, which is another issue that North Korea feels is already off the table. So I think, the public messaging in terms of what the US is looking for in trying to restart talks with the North Koreans is going to be incredibly important. And this was just not the time.
Trump did once call Kim Jong Un a friend. Now his tone seems to be much more confrontational. Can you talk to us about what is potentially behind that shift?
Well, it could be a callback to, say, for instance, the fire and fury era of 2017 ahead of talks. I think there is a little bit of frustration coming from the Trump administration, from Trump himself, that the North Koreans are not being responsive and they're not being cooperative, and he was hoping they would be. And I think some of it is also just posturing for assurances to our allies, to South Korea and Japan, that this is a high priority issue, that he understands the concerns and the security concerns there, and that it is an issue that the US and our allies will continue to work on together.
And how will Trump's shift in tone, do you think, go down with North Korea? I mean, is it likely to provoke North Korea?
I'm not sure it will necessarily provoke North Korea, but it's certainly going to push that timeline for negotiations in the future further into the future. They are not necessarily responsive to strong arm brinkmanship. And especially right now when they have options, and they have diplomatic options, they have economic options that we've seen, for instance, of course, in the relationship with Russia, warming relations with China. We saw Vietnam and Laos send high-level delegates to the recent parade in Pyongyang. So, I think for the North Koreans, there's no rush here, unlike what they saw as an opportunity back in 2018. So I think, this is really just a moment where when the time is right, we will know it. But for right now, there just isn't the right message.
Thank you so much. Jenny Town from the Stimson Center. Thanks for joining us.